Hi everybody, my name is Injin Moon and welcome to iHome Church. I first want to start off with this week's sermon by thanking many of you who have written in and really expressed your heart beautifully after our last sermon, Heal. And I really want to thank you for your honest and moving testimonies and your moving stories about what you have been through and how much you believe in really kind of moving forward and wanting to be that true love person, a man and a woman of God. And I was really moved to tears by some of your emails and some of your responses. So once again, thank you. This week, I want to talk about the topic of love is the key to unity. And I'm sure lots of you might think, well, that's kind of obvious, isn't it? Well, some of the most important or profound insights in life come in very simple sound bites or simple wisdom nuggets, as I call it. But as we all know, for those of us who have quite an experience being a veteran on this journey through life, really trying to be a true love individual, know that trying to apply those principles in our daily life or in our reality is not that simple. And so I can totally understand many of you when you ask the questions, I've been a believer, I've been a proud unificationist for many, many years of my life, but lately, I am dealing with some of these things that are really challenging my faith. And many of you have expressed to me about your discontentment or your unhappiness regarding your own life vis-a-vis your kids or your parents or your intimate relationships in the context of a family. But many of you have expressed difficulties in the community that we call the church. And the words that I hear over and over again in many of your testimonies and many of your emails is the word unhappy, and I feel no peace. There's just so much conflict. How do we move forward? Well, our true Father shared with us his wisdom nuggets a while back, and he said, no one wants to unite if the purpose of doing so is temporary. Everyone wants eternal oneness. What single element can bring that about? It is love. Love is the foundation for unity. It is the foundation of happiness that is worth unending dedication. Without love, there is no happiness. Without love, there is no peace. Without love, there is only conflict. But when love is abundant, everything is harmonized. Now, when you listen to this quote, it's quite eye-opening, isn't it? Because Father is clearly saying that when you do not have love in your life, that's when there's no happiness. That's when there's no peace, and your life or our life is rife with conflict. And so we know that from experience, many times we try to kind of live our lives hoping to have peace or happiness in our life. But what Father is basically saying is, without an understanding of what love is, and without trying to experience it or apply it in our daily lives, we will never get to the goals that we seek, which is many times we want happiness, we want peace in our families, we want families without conflict. And we also know from experience that in a religious institution, there's many times a pack mentality or a mob mentality, and wherever the mob in that particular community goes, everyone follows. And sometimes we're very, very good at just following and not really thinking about where we are or who we are in the process. And so we're very good at kind of fabricating the sense of unity. But if it is not real, or if it's not genuine, or if it's not true, that fabricated sense of unity will only be temporary, and before we know it, we're going to be challenged with life, because guess what? Life has a way of interjecting itself into every aspect of our lives. And if we are not true to who we claim we are supposed to be, which is a true love movement, and and we're not really working on being a true loving person each day and each night, then sooner or later, the big tsunami of life will come and hit us. And lo and behold, we will be left floundering out in the open sea, wondering where all our happiness, where all our sense of peace went. And, being inundated with all of these conflicts or difficulties in our life, we feel swamped. We feel totally zapped out of our energies, and we're wondering whether we can go on another day. And I think if we are to ask ourselves the question of how are we doing as that true love individual, or how are we doing as a movement, well, I think we have to agree that part of the reason why we are having such difficulty at really resolving all the conflict, or really finding that inner peace that we so desire, is that many times we have forgotten how to love in the process of trying to create, or many times manufacture or fabricate, the sense of unity. And so when we ask ourselves, well, then, okay, we're dealing with a family or a community that's less than ideal. So then we need to ask ourselves, well, how can we experience or apply this thing called true love in our lives, so that we can help ourselves work towards this unity, or this unification church, or a unified family that we are really kind of proclaiming ourselves to be out into the world. There's this wonderful story that Father shared with us many years ago on May 1st, 1977. And he gave his own testimony about really working with this young prostitute to rehabilitate her and restore her to God's daughter that he really knew her to be. And he said, "I once rescued a prostitute, a young girl who had fallen into that pitiful situation. I loved her as my own sister. I remember it as if it were yesterday. After listening to her story, I wept with her and truly uplifted her. That kind of deed is greater and more precious than prayer." When I read this testimony of Father, it really moved me to tears, because in this tiny little story about his little interaction of how he was able to transform or take this young prostitute from her predicament to an understanding that she was God's daughter, Father did couple things, or what I like to call the 3 steps. And one of the things that Father did in really kind of showing or expressing or applying true love in this girl's life vis-a-vis the girl's relationship to true Father is absolutely profound, because he starts off the relationship not in a way having her come to him, but he is the one who seeks her out. She is the reject. She is the unwanted. She is the other vis-a-vis the society. And many people can go on with their life being very, very happy, not dealing with the rejected or the wasted or the ones that are left behind. But Father having the heart of really the true Father of the world, or true Father of the universe, sees every person in that true divine state. He has a picture of this beautiful young girl, And even though she's in this wretched state, living a life as a prostitute, Father never gives up on every individual's potential to become that divine and a beautiful child of God. So Father is the one who is proactive. Father is the one who reaches out to this one labeled the other, or the ugly, or the untouchables of society. And what does he do? There are these 3 incredible steps that really are the key to transforming any relationship. Father says he loves her like his own sister. Again, this idea of really living for the sake of others and really understanding the other as a member of your own family is a beautiful, beautiful witness to who God is as our Heavenly Parent. But what does Father do? Number 1, he listens to the prostitute. Number 2, what does he do? They weep together. Father weeps together with the prostitute. And what is the next thing that Father does? Father uplifts the prostitute. So it really doesn't matter who we are. We can be born rich, we can be born poor, we can be a prostitute, we can be a nun or a saint, regardless of what kind of categories or designations or terms that the world has for us. We as human beings, as that child of God, we all want to be understood. We all want to be acknowledged. We all want to be appreciated as that divine and a beautiful child of God. Well, by Father applying and really expressing his love in these 3 steps does exactly that. By listening to the prostitute without any judgment, just purely really giving of himself, just being there to listen to her story, he helps her feel understood. And isn't that one of the most incredible things about being loved? When you feel loved by somebody, you feel understood by them. And that's the first step that True Father takes. Then what is the second step that True Father does? He weeps together with her. Not only does he listen to the story of this prostitute, but he becomes this compassionate, almost like a mentor, almost maybe a father figure that this prostitute never had. And he weeps together, acknowledging what she has been through, acknowledging her suffering thus far, and really being compassionate enough and really being empathetic enough to, in a way, weep together in listening to the difficulties or to the horrendousness of her situation. And in that action, acknowledges her as somebody who has suffered. Then what is the third step that our True Father does? He not only listens and not only weeps together, he not only understands, makes her feel understood, and not only acknowledges her suffering, but the third step that Father does is uplift her. In a way, Father is showing her that he appreciates her as that incredible divine daughter of God that she can be. And by reminding what she was meant to be, or the manifestation of what she can be in her life, the kind of a vision that God had for her when he created her, that vision and that understanding, by truly appreciating her as this beautiful person, uplifts her and really transforms her into the kind of a person that God, that our True Father, and ultimately she wants to be. And so it's an incredible, absolutely beautiful story. And it, in our life, many times, we go to a doctor because we want a cure for some of our ailments that we're dealing with. And what does a good doctor do? A good doctor listens, because by listening to what you have to say about what you are suffering from, he will get an assessment of what kind of symptoms you are dealing with. And what does a good doctor do? A good doctor is going to acknowledge those symptoms that you are experiencing and, give you a diagnosis of your situation or a diagnosis of your health. And then what else does a good doctor do? He acknowledges your symptoms. He understands what you're going through, and therefore he is going to help you appreciate or uplift you in your life by giving you a better remedy for your situation, by many times prescribing a particular medication to help improve your situation. And, religion is kind of like that, in that Father says, part of the reason why I have stressed home church over the years is because Father doesn't want brothers and sisters or men and women all around the world to be addicted to religion. Religion is what you need when you are sick and you need a doctor to kind of help you through it. But the whole point about being a good religion or a good doctor is to restore your health. We need religion because we fell away from God. And now we need a certain kind of a teaching or perhaps an institution that helps guide us to live a better and an improved life. But the ultimate responsibility of really bringing it home is in our care, or what we call 5% responsibility. So many times we go through life demanding from our loved ones to be loved and to be understood and to be acknowledged and to be appreciated, not realizing that in order to, hope this from another person, we have to do the very same, starting with ourselves. We have to understand who we are, who, what, where, and when, the 4 questions that I like to talk about. We have to understand who we are. We have to acknowledge that we are God's sons and daughters. And we have to truly appreciate our life, living a life of gratitude. And that's really the only way we are going to venture forward and be that light onto the world, by helping others to see that they are that incredible men and women of God. So some of you, when you kind of hear this story of True Father, might think, well, okay, if I have difficulty in my relationship with my parents or with my children or with my spouse or with my extended loved ones, all I have to do is just listen and cry together with them and say a couple nice words of praise, and our relationship should be solved. But that is not what Father is talking about. First of all, this person knows that their relationship that starts at the moment Father reaches out to her is not something temporary. What they both long for and what they're going for is really creating this eternal oneness, this heart of a family. And so the prostitute knows that Father will be there for the long haul. Father is not just, weeping, or many times in a church community, there's almost like this pressure to cry. And one of the things that really turned me off as a believer in this community when I was growing up is all of this horrendous, loud, unison crying. And there was almost like this peer pressure that you had to cry in order to be a faithful person. Like you couldn't possibly be a loving person if you didn't know how to yelp like a coyote, looking at the moon in the night sky. And I totally understand the need for that in some situations, and I understand the heart. But I also could see that there was this incredible pressure for people to kind of act out their faith. And that's not what Father is talking about here. Father is talking about really kind of being able to empathize with the other, to really fully understand their situation. And in this particular instance, maybe it was crying together. But maybe in a different context, it would be something totally different. But what Father achieved in this little interaction with a prostitute is he made her feel like she was somebody incredibly important. And I think many times in the course of our life, we're so busy with mission work, we're so busy with all the little details of life that we truly take our loved ones for granted. And many times we are very good at listening to people who come and visit our home for the day. We give them our undivided attention. We give them our undivided appreciation. We give them the undivided acknowledgement in how we are so happy to have them in our lives. But many times in an immediate relationship, or especially in a married relationship, we take each other for granted, and we forget to learn how to listen to the other. I know that in many marriage therapies, one of the first things that the therapist would usually ask a couple to do is, please express your heart in 3 points, and see if the other can repeat exactly what you've said to kind of show you that you have been heard. And it is absolutely astounding to me how many couples cannot do this simple procedure of repeating what the other have said. They kind of generalize. The 3 points become one sentence. And like, for instance, if a spouse says, I would really like for us to communicate more, touch more, and to show our appreciation. Communicate, touch, and show our appreciation. Many times in this therapy session, the other cannot repeat those 3 things. And so you realize that we stop listening for some reason. The minute we get married and we think that we have this person as our lockdown partner for the rest of our life, they can't go anywhere because we're blessed, then we just start taking them for granted. We stop listening to them. And guess what? If we stop listening to them, they're going to find other people that will listen to them much better. It's just the way it is. So if we sincerely value our relationship with our spouse, we have to work on continually growing together by learning how to listen to them as we grow together. And in a spousal relationship, we are so busy with our lives. I know that sometimes I'm at wit's end because there's just not enough hours in a day to get things done. And there's like a whole litany of things. And sometimes I get frustrated because I almost expect my husband to read my mind and to know the list and to get it done without my asking. And sometimes I have to catch myself thinking, but I haven't communicated the things that needs to be done to him in a way that he understands it. So how can I expect him to just read my mind, like this incredible magician? He should be that knight in shining armor, taking away all my problems and, making my life so easy because he is so privileged to be my husband. Sometimes I find myself falling into that state because life is just so busy that I forget to acknowledge that he is my partner and my most important partner in life. And the simple communication of just letting him know I appreciate him. Like, honey, I love you. You were an ass last night, but I still love you. And just letting him know that, we will be rubbing up against each other. That's the beauty of life, because as I rub up against him and he rubs up against me, sometimes he's a little stronger, he's the Viking, and he rubs me a little deeper and harder. But that's what helps me be a better person in the end. And I realized the importance of acknowledging him. And yes, you exist. And yes, you can't read my mind. I know you love me, but just because you cannot read my mind does not mean you do not love me. And I have to acknowledge that he is trying his best. And when I do that, when I make him feel understood because I give him my undivided attention, even though things are, going crazy, when he is talking to me, I give him my eyeballs, not just my ears, and I give him my body direction, then he feels understood. And when I tell him these simple things like, honey, yeah, last night was last night, but I love you, you know, and you are the most important thing. I acknowledge him. Suddenly this, oh, hallelujah comes over my husband, and he is just inspired to do incredible things for me. Without my asking. And that's the beauty of love. And I think sometimes in a religious community, we forget to really appreciate our spouses. The unspoken things that our spouses do for us each day, and really on behalf of the family. And, I know that there are things that my husband does around the house on a daily basis that he doesn't really expect brownie points on, but I notice it all, you know. But just noticing it and feeling smug inside, I realize is quite selfish of me. I mean, if my husband makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside because of the little things that he does that he really doesn't expect to be appreciated for, but I take that opportunity because he means the world to me and express my appreciation for him by just going up to him and just giving him that hug from behind, or just letting him know that I can't do without his muscles. There are things that he does around the house that makes my life and my family's life more beautiful or more worthwhile. And I realize that, I'm kind of like a very introverted person, in that I like to keep all thoughts to myself. And, in a married relationship, you have to express it. And when I express it to my husband, when I show him my appreciation, that appreciation comes back in folds, multi-folds. And you realize, wow, so this is how you show somebody that you really truly care for them. And even in my own relationship with my parents, the most difficult thing about being in the true family is that you don't feel understood. You don't feel acknowledged. You don't feel appreciated by your parents. Your parents are really there for the larger world, and they're not there to be there as your biological parents, really meeting your every need and helping you to grow. It's almost like you're born into this family and you're expected to grow, and you're expected to feel understood, acknowledged, appreciated, all on your own. And you can't really do that on your own. You need the participation of your parents. And that's really the artistic difficulty of every true child, because our parents belong to the world. And they are so busy taking care of everybody that there's really hasn't been the kind of an opportunity to really have them interact with us as father and mother. And that's why there's this incredible hand. And my husband and I, having gone through what we have gone through for the last 3 years of really being the reject, of the garbage, seen as the garbage of our movement, it's an incredibly painful place to be. But what I remind myself, and what my husband does, is that regardless of how difficult the relationship might be, I never gave up on my ideal relationship with my parents. Even if it's non-existent, or even if it's absentee parentism, even if I am not being understood, acknowledged, or appreciated, I've never given up that one day I will experience these things. And it may never happen in this lifetime, but that's okay. We have eternal life, and that's the beautiful thing about being a family, is that I know that sooner or later I will experience this with my family. And the thing that really kind of, helps Ben and I grow together is that we have an understanding of the kind of a couple we want to be. We have a picture of what we want to be. So regardless of what we go through in life, we remind ourselves the important 3 steps of making each other feel understood, acknowledged, and appreciated, and reminding ourselves of this incredible picture of a beautiful couple and a beautiful family that we would like to create. And that's what helps us keep on going. So, you know, the good old Buddha said a long time ago that there's only really 2 mistakes that you can make in the road to, in a life of faith, or in the road to truth. He says the only 2 mistakes that you can make is not going all the way or not getting started. Well, lucky for us, thanks to true parents and thanks to heavenly parents, we have not had a problem with getting started, whether we wanted to or not. We've already started. But the second thing that we need to concentrate on is really not giving up and going all the way. And really kind of having that understanding that even if things are not ideal, it's a process, it's a journey. Learn to appreciate it, learn to grow together with it, learn to grow resilience while rubbing up against each other, because it's that resilience, it's that tension, it's the being in a difficult situation that produces the greatest strength. And I think a lot of people don't realize that a good marriage is really a work of trying to build that resilience and learning to work with the tensions to help us become stronger human beings. And it's like that in a marriage, it's like that in a family with father and mother and brothers and sisters, and it's like that in any intimate relationships. So don't give up, brothers and sisters. Keep on going. And I want to make one point clear in our conversation about the importance of understanding and acknowledging and appreciating the other. It does not mean that we need to understand and acknowledge and appreciate in every kind of a setting. What I mean by that is, if the relationship is abusive, if the relationship is detrimental in that the other person is being hurt, or physically abused or mentally or emotionally abused, then that is really not a relationship that is worthy of continuing. And that is something that we need to be honest about. There are situations when the other needs to pull away, when we need to pull away, really for the sake of the other person. Sometimes being in an abusive relationship does not make the other person better. In fact, sometimes it makes it worse. So understanding that I am not talking about extreme difficulty of relationships, but in most family relationships or most conjugal relationship where there is a basic understanding of human rights and a basic understanding and the need to honor and respect each other, then the importance of really helping the other person feel understood, acknowledged, and appreciated becomes incredibly important. So brothers and sisters, with that in mind, let's start our day remembering our Heavenly Parent, loving our true parent, and really being grateful for the life that we have been given to live each day with our true parents here. And I want to really thank everybody once again for your beautiful artistic testimonies that you've sent to me, and keep it coming because it's just a wonderful testament of how we are growing together through the magic and the blessing of the internet. So once again, thank you and have a great week. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below the video or go to injinmoon.com and use the contact form. And don't forget to subscribe to our email list. And for those of you who want to contribute to our work here at iHome Church, just click on the donate button. Thank you. Bye-bye.